welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. In this video, I'm going to be going over some of the books that I read in both July and August. So I'm kind of mixing them together and just sort of telling you what I finished reading this summer. Just a little bit of background information. I do work full-time, so I do this on the side in addition to reading. So I obviously don't get to read tens of books during the month. It's a little bit more of a realistic wrap up for someone who works full-time and has other responsibilities. And especially, I have been traveling a lot this month. Also, if you hear some rummaging in the background, my dog is kind of playing and you'll just have to excuse her. Everyone has different ratings for what 5 stars, 4 stars, and 3 stars, etc. What all of this means. And here are just some of mine. Just so you have a little bit more information as to what my rating means. So first we're gonna start off with The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. I picked this up at the used bookstore. So our two main characters in this story are Bree and Nathan. Bree is a ballerina and she kind of had a little bit of an accident with dancing, and she had to sort of put aside her dream because of it. And then we have Nathan. He is a quarterback for a made-up football team in this universe, but they are best friends and they met in high school, and we essentially follow the romance going from friends to lovers. So what I gave this book is a 2 stars. Now remember, a 2 stars for me is just not for me. If you love this book and see that I gave it 2 stars, please do not be concerned. It just wasn't necessarily my favorite. I was really excited about this book because the premise seemed very interesting and it really looked like a cute little rom-com type of romance, and that is exactly what I was looking for. And I actually ended up reading it pretty quickly as well, but the writing style was just not my favorite. The book also wasn't very long, but whenever we were in different scenes, it felt like there was too many adjectives and there was too many adverbs and there was just a lot going on. There was just too many words for one sentence and for one scene, which kind of made me skim through the sentences so I could skip through all the little adjectives and stuff. And I just wasn't really enjoying that because it felt like it was a little unnecessary to have that much because it wasn't even descriptive. It wasn't even like helpful world building information. There was just an extra adjective and adverb in every single sentence. It was just a little too much. And I didn't really love our main characters. I mean, I didn't mind Nathan, but at least Bree, for me, it was really hard to relate to her. In romance stories, there's a very thin line between, you know, being relatable and then being stereotypically cringy. And I feel like this story went a little too far with it, at least for my personal liking. I didn't think the book was bad. It just definitely wasn't one of my favorites. And I don't think I would actually recommend anyone to read this that wasn't still in middle school and maybe an underclassman in high school. This was a very quick read, but I have not thought about this book since I put it down. And that's just kind of reflective on my rating. The next book I read is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. The two main characters in this book are Knox and Naomi. Naomi has a twin sister and she kind of ends up getting an SOS call from her sister, and she ends up going to her town, and that is where she meets Knox. They get off to a pretty rocky start because he thinks that Naomi is her sister, and her sister does not have a good reputation with anyone in the town, her family, or even her own sister. And when Naomi gets to the town, not only does she realize that her sister has left her daughter to be taken care of by Naomi, but she also realizes that that town is a place that she can kind of escape from what she's dealing with in her own reality. And so this romance follows Knox and Naomi and kind of them discovering parts of their lives that they've kind of shut down and don't want to deal with. I gave this book a 4.5, which is really, really high. I really enjoyed it considering how long it is. I annotated the heck out of this book. I have thought about this book so much since putting it down. The days after, I just couldn't stop thinking about this book, and I really, really enjoyed this world. Some of the tropes in this book are Grumpy Sunshine, small town romance, fake dating, and found family. I know a lot of people don't enjoy this book because I say that the characters do not act their age, and I didn't really realize that until after the fact, and I do agree with that statement, but when I was reading it, I didn't fully comprehend that these characters were in their 30s/40s, and so when I was reading it, it didn't feel like they weren't acting their ages. So that was just kind of a fact that I set aside and did not really acknowledge when I was reading this. So if you're gonna read this, I should just warn you that. Yes, obviously there's a little bit of cringy text, but for the most part, I thought the book was really interesting, and the main character, I really related to her. It is a little long, and I think some people say that it is a little too long. I don't agree with it because there is a lot happening, and then we have a romance, and then we also have to see these characters' individual life, kind of like their character progression, and kind of learn from their lessons. So it is a little long, but I was entertained through the whole book. Highly recommend. Just know it can get a little cringy, but if you can get past some of the cringy moments, it's a really good read. There are some beautiful lessons in this book, and I highly recommend. Next, I have Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This was also such a good, great, amazing read. So I also gave this book 4.5. It was amazing, and I could not stop thinking about it after I put it down. I read this book so quickly. Abby Jimenez just has such a beautiful way of writing and of showing us these characters and these romance and like the progression through all of that. I have never read someone who is able to articulate all these feelings, all these emotions that we all feel into a book and into characters, and then have everything make sense. This is the first Abby Jimenez book I've picked up, and I am doing a video called Reading Abby Jimenez for the first time, but that video is not going to come out till a little bit later, so I don't want to spoil too much of my feelings through it, but I just want you to know that I loved it. It was amazing, and it made me go and buy 3 more Abby Jimenez books just because of this one. But just a little bit about this book. Our main characters are Brianna and Jacob. They are both doctors at this hospital. Brianna is going through a rough time. She just got divorced. Her brother is in kidney failure and needs a kidney transplant, while Jacob just transferred hospitals into the one that Brianna works at, and he suffers from anxiety. And he also just broke up with his significant other. Essentially, they end up fake dating, and they end up being more intertwined with their lives than they initially thought so. And yeah, then we have the whole story, and it is great. You should all read it. And if you want to know more in depth of my thoughts, go and watch the video when I post it. I did a lot of annotations, and I show some of my favorite parts of the book. The next book is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I did say that I loved the book and I loved her writing style, and I went and I purchased more of her books. And here we are. I feel like everyone knows the premise about this book. We have Emma and Justin, and they both think that they have this curse where everyone they end up dating, eventually once they break up, they go on to meet their love of their life. And so they figured if they date for a little bit, that should break the curse, and then they should be able to find the love of their life afterwards. I actually ended up giving this book 5 stars. Okay, Abby Jimenez, all of them are 5 stars, but I liked the characters a little bit more in this one, and mainly because Justin has an acts of service type of love style, and that's the love that I want. But trust me, both of the books are amazing. I don't know what else to say then. You should read it. The life lessons that Abby Jimenez puts in these books are absolute beautiful, and it'll literally make you rethink your life. She is so good at romance, but the way that she writes to you about lessons that you've lived in your own life is just amazing. She's actually my favorite author. I don't think I've ever met an author that I love both the romance and the life lessons as much as Abby Jimenez. And then lastly, the last book that I read during this little summer period is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. My rating for this one is 3 stars. It was okay. I thought it was okay. I really enjoyed some parts of it, and then there were other parts of it that I think could have gone a little bit better. The premise of the story is that we have the Reds and we have the Silvers. The Reds have red blood, the Silvers have silver blood. And anyone who is a Silver has a supernatural ability. Like, they can manipulate water, fire, they can be invisible, they can go into people's minds. There's all these different powers, and because of that, the Silvers are kind of reigning over the Reds, and the Reds are essentially like the bottom class and the servants to the Silvers, just because naturally they have the power, so they made the Reds work for them. And we follow Mare, who is a red blood, but she actually ends up having a superpower in some way, somehow. The people in charge find out about this. There's this whole journey between her figuring out that she has this power, them knowing that she has it, and what to do, plus also all the politics and the government and all of those things that have to do in a fantasy. I thought it was a really good read. This is a YA, and you can tell. I think this book would have been so great if I had read this in middle school when I also read like the Hunger Games and the Divergent series. I think now that I'm a little bit older, some of the parts were a little slow, and I struggled with the world building in this book a little bit. I'm not sure if it was of the writing style or just that it was hard for me to get into, but for some reason the world building, I could just not imagine it when normally I can imagine everything so well in a world. I don't know why. That is the end of the video. Thank you so much for clicking on this and watching it. Hopefully you enjoyed that. If you want to see some of my other videos, please be sure to browse around. Thank you so much for watching.